Hello everyone and welcome to my CS24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. 90 Day Fiancé. Greg Chillak and Joan Kruchov are rubbing me the wrong way. Will they be cast again? I'm not liking 90 Day Fiancé Season 11 couple, Greg Chillak and Joan Kruchov, as their behavior and attitudes are rubbing me the wrong way. But I fear they may be cast in the franchise again. 90 Day Fiancé Season 11 is more than halfway through the season, and Greg and Joan have gotten a lot of screen time as their wedding day approaches. Joan is originally from Kampala, Uganda. She and Long Island, New York, native Greg met when Greg was traveling in Uganda. They had an initial spark that led to more after they reconnected on social media. Greg was a 35-year-old part-time baker who, admittedly, never held down a real job when he entered the franchise. And 27-year-old Joan abandoned her NGO director job to come to America and be with Greg. I've noticed several red flags between the pair. Video game-addicted Greg had turned down a good state job opportunity, while Joan was full of unhealthy ultimatums. The pair don't seem to function in an adult relationship well, as they rely on Greg's mother, Lucille, a lot, and their treatment of her irks me. Greg lives in his mother's house, and before Joan arrived, Lucille did everything for Greg. Between picking up after him, cleaning, and encouraging him, Greg depended on his mother for full support. Once Joan came to America, she too relied on Lucille. Greg does have dreams of buying his own house one day, but he is completely unrealistic, as is Joan. Joan wants the timeline to move out to be 6 months, but Greg knows he won't have the funds by then. Moreover, Greg won't compromise and move into an apartment, which I find annoying. Greg and Joan are going to continue to need to rely on Lucille while they figure out their logistical steps. Greg can't function without the help and support of his mom. While I think it's great they share a close bond, I think Joan and Greg are taking advantage of her since they don't seem to appreciate all that she provides. Lucille gave Greg and Joan a roof over their heads only for Joan to turn around and tell Lucille that she was in her own home too much and should go out more. I do acknowledge that Joan has been doing some of the house chores, unlike Greg, but her comment towards Lucille, I felt, was super out of line. Then, Joan asked Lucille to drive her to her wedding dress fitting, and Lucille thought she would be part of the experience. But Joan didn't want Lucille to come, and she instead had a video call with her family. It hurt Lucille's feelings again. I don't think Joan should be so harsh and dismissive of Lucille, given all she's doing for her. Lucille wants to be a good mother-in-law, but Joan is making it hard. 90 Day Fiancé's Greg and Joan do have an inflammatory storyline and circumstances, which usually bodes well for couples who have tended to return to the franchise after their initial appearances. However, I don't think they are interesting enough to merit an entire follow-up narrative on the Happily Ever After spin-off. Were they to be selected to appear again, I think the catch-up self-filmed spin-off 90 Day Diaries would be better suited for them. Although I wish they would just fade away into 90 Day Fiancé. Every season of 90 Day Fiancé introduces a few couples who instantly grab the audience's attention, and not always for the right reasons. This time it's Greg Chillak and Joan Kruchov who have become the talk of the town, and frankly, they're rubbing many viewers, including me, the wrong way. Something about their dynamic feels off. A strange mixture of control, passive-aggressive jabs, and an unsettling imbalance of power that makes every scene between them feel like walking through emotional quicksand. At first glance, Greg appears to be the kind of man who has his life perfectly put together, confident, articulate, and sure of what he wants. He's older, successful, and clearly takes pride in how he presents himself. But beneath that cool exterior lies a tone of superiority that creeps into almost every interaction with Joan. He doesn't yell or rage, but his micro-expressions, his choice of words, and his subtle put-downs make it clear that he's used to being in control. The problem is, Joan doesn't seem to recognize how much she's bending herself to fit into his world. Joan, for her part, is charming and soft-spoken, but there's a hint of desperation that seeps through her calm demeanor. She came across as hopeful when she first appeared, a woman who wanted to believe in love again after years of disappointment. But the longer she's with Greg, the more it feels like she's slowly losing herself, molding her opinions and even her personality to match his. Watching her smile nervously whenever Greg corrects her pronunciation or interrupts her mid-sentence has become uncomfortable, almost painful. It's not that Joan is naive, far from it. She's intelligent, emotionally aware, and when she lets her guard down, refreshingly honest. But it's clear she's trying so hard to make this relationship work that she's overlooking red flags that could fill a parade. One of the most telling moments came when she tried to talk about moving closer to her family, and Greg quickly dismissed it, saying, "I don't see why that would make sense. Your family should visit us." That us, of course, really meant him. It's moments like that that make me question whether Greg is truly looking for love or for someone who will quietly fit into his structured lifestyle. He seems to want a partner who complements his routine, not one who challenges it. He talks about compromise, but when you watch closely, the compromises always seem to lean in his favor. He'll frame it as logic, as practicality, but it's control dressed up in polite language. What's frustrating is that Greg doesn't present as the typical villain of 90 Day Fiancé. He's not explosive or overtly cruel. Instead, he's calm, measured, even manipulative in a subtle, almost polished way. That makes it more difficult to pinpoint exactly why he's so unsettling, but it's there, that quiet, simmering imbalance that defines his relationship with Joan. And Joan, bless her, seems caught between defending him and defending herself. Whenever someone, whether it's a friend, a family member, or even a producer, questions Greg's behavior, Joan's instinct is to downplay it. "He's just very direct," she'll say, or "that's how he shows he cares." You can see her trying to convince herself as much as anyone else. She's emotionally invested, but she's also emotionally trapped. Their scenes together have this strange energy that keeps you watching. Not because it's romantic, but because you're waiting for the moment Joan finally snaps and says what everyone else is thinking. Every sigh, every hesitant smile, every awkward pause feels like she's on the verge of admitting that something isn't right. But she never does. Instead, she doubles down on optimism, saying things like, "Greg just wants what's best for us." Even their supposed romantic moments come off as tense. When they went on that dinner date where Greg ordered for both of them, it was telling. He smiled proudly, explaining to the camera that Joan doesn't really know what she likes yet. "Excuse me?" She's a grown woman, not a child who needs guidance on what to eat. That single moment summed up their entire dynamic. Greg deciding, Joan accepting. To be fair, there might be things happening off camera that we don't see. Reality TV editing can exaggerate certain behaviors or leave out moments that would make things clearer. But even taking that into account, there's something about Greg and Joan's chemistry that just doesn't feel authentic. Their interactions lack warmth, they're polite but strained, affectionate but rehearsed.